A few months ago, I made a video about the 1994 and 2011 Vancouver riots. As it turns out, Vancouver wasn't the only city in Canada to have hockey riots break out. There's another city with a history of riots connected to their favorite hockey team. There is one in particular we will look at today. What started as a brawl in Boston turned into a cultural clash between French-speaking Quebecers and English-speaking Canadians. Play the intro. I usually start with a team's backstory, but in this case, I need to do a real historical backstory. Quebec was founded as a fur trading post by a French settler. Huh, that sounds familiar. Over time, Quebec grew into a big province as part of British North America, or Canada. Unlike the other provinces, who primarily speak English, Quebec is a francophone haven. Besides their French heritage, Quebecers have one other thing to celebrate: the Montreal Canadiens. The Canadiens, or Les Habitants, are one of the oldest teams in the National Hockey League. They're the most successful with 24 Stanley Cups, the most in the NHL. Montreal is notorious for being connected with riots. There's the Stanley Cup riots of 1986 and 1993, and the Victory Riot in 2021 following the Canadiens advancing to the Stanley Cup Final. And in order to tell the story of this particular riot, we need to go back to 1955. No, I didn't do that to shoehorn a Back to the Future reference. You shut up. Despite their pride and heritage, Quebecers were being treated like second-class citizens in their own home. In the 1950s, Quebec's economy, businesses, and resources were controlled by English-speaking Canadians and Americans. Quebecers were paid the lowest salaries among ethnic groups at the time. And since we're talking about francophones and Quebec nationalism, there is one other character we need to talk about: Maurice Richard. Rashard was basically their equivalent of Superman. There were two things Quebecers praised back then: God and Maurice Richard. In fact, former referee Red Story said that Richard was bigger than the Pope in Quebec. All Quebecers looked to him as an example of their francophone heritage. I'll put it to you this way: they made a book about hockey jerseys called The Hockey Sweater. Long story short, it involves Maurice Richard, a Canadiens jersey, and a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey. It's an iconic book in Canadian literature. Back on topic, Richard was a talented player. His nickname Rocket came from his blazing speed. Off the ice, he was a quiet and humble person. On the ice, while he had speed and could score goals at will, he also had a temper. And it came crashing down on March 13th, 1955. The Montreal Canadiens are in Boston taking on one of their most hated rivals, the Boston Bruins. The Canadiens were on the power play in the third period, down 3-1. Richard had the puck when Bruins defenseman Hal LeCoy struck Richard in the head. Richard would need 5 stitches to heal the cut. Enraged, Richard went up to LeCoy and struck him in the face with his stick. I know what you're thinking. Penguin note, doesn't that sound like your average hockey play? Yeah, that was the norm, at least back then. Hockey players don't try to kill each other anymore. Most of them don't. Anyway, during the commotion, Richard was separated by linesman Cliff Thompson. Richard wasn't done and punched Thompson twice. Both players got off the ice and the game was able to continue. Boston won the game 4-2. LeCoy got a 5-minute major and a 10-minute misconduct. Richard was assessed a match penalty and a $100 fine. But that wasn't the last punishment Richard would receive. Boston police tried to arrest Richard, but the Canadiens wouldn't let them. The real punishment came from the NHL. NHL President Clarence Campbell, an Anglo-Canadian, laid a swift penalty on Richard. He would be suspended for the remainder of the season, including the playoffs. Montreal would be without their star player for the playoffs. At this point, the Canadiens were in a dogfight for the Stanley Cup. Without Richard, Montreal would be weakened. Public outcry came immediately after the suspension was announced. Quebecers thought it was another example of English-speaking Canadians flexing their superiority over French-speaking Quebecers. On St. Patrick's Day, the Canadiens would play their first game without Richard, and Campbell made the second stupidest decision of his life. He attended the game. The Canadiens were hosting the Detroit Red Wings and fell behind 4-1. Meanwhile, in the stands of the Montreal Forum, Campbell was being beaten, punched, and had food and trash pelted at him. I know, what a shocker. Who could have seen this coming? And to top it all off, one fan set off a tear gas bomb. Everyone evacuated the Forum by order of the Montreal Fire Department. The Canadiens had to forfeit the game to the Red Wings. And I would be remiss if I didn't say this. The real headlines were being made outside of the Forum. Between the Montreal Forum and St. Catherine Street, chaos erupted. What started as fans showing their support for Richard became a riot. Before the game even started, fans had begun protesting Campbell, but when the game was forfeited, Pandora's box was smashed open. Cars were flipped over, fires started, stores were looted, and bystanders were beaten. Hell had come to Montreal. An estimated total of 40 to 100 people were arrested that night. Nobody had lost their life that night, but a presumed guess of 37 people, including 27 citizens and 12 police officers, were beaten in the chaos. The cost of damages was estimated to be around 100,000 Canadian. All of this took place in a 7-hour span. Due to the ongoing destruction, Maurice Richard himself went on radio to tell everyone to stop. He said the following quote, "Because I always try so hard to win and had my troubles in Boston, I was suspended. At playoff time, it hurts to not be in the game with the boys. However, I want to do what is good for the people of Montreal and the team. So that no further harm will be done, I would like to ask everyone to get behind the team and help the boys win from the New York Rangers in Detroit. I will take my punishment and come back next year to help the club and the younger players win the cup." The mayor of Montreal put the blame on Campbell for attending the game and provoking the fans' wrath. Campbell denied all of this. To be fair, if he didn't show up, there's a good chance this still happens. So who do you blame for all of this? Do you blame Richard for swinging his stick at LaCoy in retaliation and punching the official? Do you blame Campbell for throwing the book at Richard only and attending the game in Montreal? Or should LaCoy take the blame for provoking Richard in the first place? What about infuriated Quebecers who started and participated in the riot? That might be up to you. Following the riot, Richard lived his promise and helped the Canadiens win 5 straight Stanley Cups from 1956 to 1960. Off the ice, Quebec saw massive social change in both economics and politics. And that was the last time Quebec lost its mind over its French nationalism and being different from the rest of Canada. Nope, can't think of any other moments. Today, the Montreal Canadiens are in the middle of a rebuild. Les Canadiens are trying to pick up the pieces after going all in and coming up short in 2021. There are some pieces, but Montreal needs a lot more before they can become true contenders again. At least if one of their players gets suspended, it won't cause another riot. It won't, right? Also today, relationships between French and English in Quebec have massively improved. It is unlikely that a conflict between French and English will break out in Quebec again. At least I hope not. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. If you want to watch my video on the Vancouver riots, the link is in the description down below. If we get to 500 subscribers before December 27th, I'll do a Q&A for my birthday. I'll see you in the next video.